One of the things that I'm regretting is I had to go into town today because I was totally out of coal in the truck and the road was a disaster. I wanted to go in when it was a little bit frozen, and even though there was snow on the ground, it wasn't really frozen. So I got coal, which is fine. That's a half a ton on there in case you're wondering. But my poor truck is all beaten up. So I'm gonna have to, the next warm day, I'll pull it outside and wash it real quick and go from there. Okay guys, so again, this is the starter armature for that Ford backhoe. This is the gear that runs into the starter when you activate the solenoid. This plate comes off of here and there's a rubber gasket on it. Okay, this plate fits over top of a piece inside there. Now that's tight, so there's nothing to really worry about in there. Okay, so after we put the rubber on, and what I did was I put some of this gasket maker, sorry about that, I put gasket maker around it, and then this is shaped like a U, so I put that around there. It's a little short in one spot, and I'll probably have to put a little extra gasket maker on there, but I'll worry about that after the fact. Okay, so then I put this gear on here, and you can check the different splines, or the teeth rather. You can check the different splines, make sure it's working good. There should be nothing really bothering it. I cleaned that all out before, put a little bit of oil on it. So that's good. Now, the next thing here is we really want to put onto this. Let me just put this back a little bit here. We want to put this shaft on here. Now this goes onto this and moves this back and forth. And then this end goes onto the solenoid. Okay, and that solenoid moves this like this to engage the gear into the flywheel on the machine. Now, in order to keep this thing from slamming against the housing here, there's two fittings. There's this little ring that actually holds, there's a ring here like a spring, but it's a closure spring. And then there's this ring that goes around that to hold it in place. So when you put this on here, you don't want to put this, if you look, I don't know if you can see in there really good, but you'll see there's a low spot and then on the back it's flat. The flat spot, okay, the flat part goes down towards the gear with the teeth on it, or the teeth. Okay, so this piece then goes on top of this and it gets slid down to this bevel, or this groove rather, that's cut in there, and then this comes up over top of that to lock it in place. So I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so now we want to put this ring on and this keeper. Okay, so what I've done is I took the set of snap ring pliers and I actually spread this open a little bit and got it to go over the top. Bumped it with a hammer just to get it over, and then it slid down onto here pretty well. Now the idea here is to put this keeper around this, okay, this keeper around the spring to hold it into there. Now it's not real hard, but it's kind of a little bit of a nuisance here. Okay, if you look at it there, you can see that it's down in now. Okay, so that's down inside there, and it's not going to come out when you pull on this thing. So that's the way that has to be set in there. So the ring fits inside of the little groove that's inside this washer type thing. Alright, so once you got that on there, then the gear can't come off. Okay, so now let me take this out of here. And the thing we want to do now is we want to get the housing here onto these the armature. So we want to get this in here like this. Now the way to do this is to, as you're putting the armature into the starter, you need to put this lever on here pretty much at the same time. So I have that started on there, as you can see, and I'm just going to let it go down in through and get the point of the bearing, or I mean the point of the shaft into the bearing. Okay, So that's on there, and our piece, our lever, is in both areas that it has to be on. It's on the piece that it's going to use to push the gear in, and on the other side here, let me just pull it out a little bit. On the other side here, which you might be able to see it inside there, that's going to get ready to take the other side of the solenoid. So then this part of the solenoid then, I'm just going to put this on here to stay like that. So this part of the solenoid is what gets hooked onto that thing. So once you have this all the way down, you can sort of move this up. Let me get a little something to hold this with. You can sort of bend this up or move this up to be able to put the solenoid onto it. Boy, I'll tell you what, I'm really having a hard time with my hands today. So I'm going to hold the lever up and I'm going to put this over top of it. Okay? Once that's over top of it, it'll pretty much stay on there. Okay guys, so we've got the pin in there to hold the lever that moves the gear. We've got the Bendix in and we've got the housing on. Okay? And as far as the housing turning and everything, you can adjust it to these two wires. There's wires that come out of here, they go right over top of these fittings. Wire fittings, and then we'll tighten them up. So I have to find a nut here yet to put on there, and then I'll put that together, and then I'll show you how to put the top on there. Brush plate back in here. So let me just check and make sure I have everything. So the rubber that goes on this end is already on here, so that's good. There's a brass fitting in there, and there's this collar that goes around this. That's already in there. So now what I've done here is I've taken these springs. Let me just see what you're seeing here. I've taken these springs off of here that push down on the brushes so that I can get the brushes onto this without damaging anything. Alright, so we're going to put this brush through here, and then this brush through here. We're going to open them up so that they fall down on over the commutator. Okay guys, so I soldered the two positive cables back in there, and I believe they're going to be okay. So now that that's in there, I can put the body onto the armature and get that all set up, and then I can go ahead and work on putting that brush plate back in. Okay guys, so the starter's all together. I put a little bit of the mastic stuff where I thought it might get some moisture through the rubber gasket there. This other gasket is good. The hardest part of putting the starter together is getting the springs onto the brush plate and getting the brushes into place. Opening them up is not a real big deal because they're not all that tight, so you can open them and then just, you know, push them down on to the commutator and just leave them closed. And then after you do that, you got to tighten up those two screws here that go into the top plate. So the things that have to be put together properly is where this groove or gouge is here, there's a pin sticking out of the aluminum. There's a hole in the housing, so that's where that plate goes. That lines up the bolt holes then to tighten the whole thing together. Inside here there's a round plastic piece that has a rod through it that goes inside of the housing here. So you have to make sure that that's in line with the housing, or else you'll be bending it when you tighten it up. One good way to do that is to push it down onto the pin here and adjust it that way. What you can do is you can turn the shaft after you push this down to make sure the pin falls in there. But it's a pin that goes this direction, and it goes inside of, you know, 2 grooves that are on each side of the shaft, and you have to make sure that you get them in there. Other than that, it's pretty much the same as any other starter, just a lot heavier. Most starters are fairly heavy. This one isn't that big. I've seen bigger ones, but you know, I'm just saying. So now all I have to do is test it. So it's the end of the day. I don't have a chance to do that right at the moment, and I got to go get my jumper cables for that anyway. So I'll be testing this probably tomorrow sometime just to see how it works, and I'm sure it's going to work good. And that should be it. The way the teeth are on here, they look like they're angled back. That's exactly how the new ones were. So I'm not even worried about that. I am totally convinced that this starter is going to be fine. It seemed to me like it had just gotten moisture inside where one of the brushes were, and that brush was goofing up the starter, keeping it from spinning. I'll tell you, one of the things I got to do is clean up this bench. I can't stand this anymore. I've had it. This is the alternator that I just took off, and these are actually all the tools I used to fix it, the starter. So we'll check how it goes later, but like I say, I'm pretty sure it's going to be fine. Hey guys, just to let you know, it's 10 right now, and it has been cold all day. We got about a ½ inch of snow or so, maybe an inch, and that's about it. They're calling for 2 to 4 inches tomorrow, Saturday. So I don't know what's going to happen. But it is a cold one now.